Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to welcome onto the show Julie Holmes. Julie Holmes is an inventor, a founder, an entrepreneur, and a corporate survivor. Her favorite question is, what if? What if you could transform your frustration into time savings and money making? It might sound crazy, but that's exactly what she's been doing for organizations for over 25 years. An award-winning speaker, Julie has designed and launched solutions from million-dollar software solutions to tiny Bluetooth microphones that we're going to learn about. But her creative expertise isn't limited to products. She has helped organizations like Expedia, Oracle, and FedEx leverage incremental innovation thinking to improve their teams, leaders, and sales processes. Julie shows audiences how to find their inner inventor, embrace their entrepreneur, and spot the big opportunities in even the smallest innovations. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Julie on the show today. So welcome, Julie.
Hello, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much.
So I know you're just about to get ready. You're giving a big presentation to a lot of speakers in the US as well. How do you feel speaking to speakers as opposed to you're going out speaking mostly to corporations all the time and associations? What does it feel like when you have to go and speak to speakers?
Do you know what? I really love it. I do. I love speaking to meeting planners and to speakers. I love speaking to people in my industry because all of a sudden, all the things that I do behind the scenes, I get to go, look at all this cool stuff you can do behind the scenes. And I can't really take that out to my corporate clients because they're like, what? Why? I don't understand what you're doing. So I love it. They're my people.
Fantastic. So take us back a little bit. How did you get into the strange world of speaking?
Do you know what? It's my background in speaking goes way back. I actually have, brace yourself, a BS in speech. You can get that. I have a
bachelor's
bachelor's
of science in speech.
Just
so everyone knows that. Well, BS. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a bachelor's and a master's in communication. And I used to teach public speaking and influence and other communication courses at a university. And then I went into corporate. And because I had that background, all the time that I was in corporate as whether I was a consultant or in product management or in director of marketing or whether I was director of strategy, whatever it was, I was always called upon to speak. So I was forever doing keynotes and thought leadership presentations on behalf of our products and putting together demos and all kinds of stuff. And about 3.5 years ago now, I decided I wanted to kind of venture farther afield from corporate, which often happens. And so after 20 plus years, I kind of was like, okay, let's do something different. And you sit down and you go, what skills do I have? What do I know? Turns out I know speaking, as it turns out. And but I also was really excited about the opportunity to start taking some of my own products to market. So that was the other side of it. So speaking allowed me to do that.
Tell me about that transition, because I know there's probably a lot of people maybe watching, listening to this just now, who are in the same position that you were in working in a corporate world. Maybe they enjoy the job, but they just maybe don't think it's getting the best of them, and they want to move on to speaking. I remember we had a guest on before, Shirley Davis. We had a speaker from the US who spoke about she had like a 3-year plan to how to move out of her corporate gig into being a full-time speaker. So can you tell me about how much time did you give yourself to make that transition? Was it you just woke up one day and said, that's it, I'm going to hand in my notice? Or did you give yourself a few months or a year? Or what did that look like?
I did a bit of a hybrid. So I started to research it as a profession. In fact, I didn't even know it was a profession until probably about 6 or 7 years ago, when we hosted a conference for our users. So I worked for a software company at the time, and we hired a professional speaker. And I was like, wait a minute, that's a job? Like, whoa, hold on. We're paying her I could do that. I know that stuff. So that was kind of my epiphany. And so I started to really research it. My first stop was, I was in the States at the time. My first stop was NSA, the National Speakers Association. Joined the Arizona chapter where I was living. I started attending some kind of boot camp trainings and understanding what the business of speaking looked like. But I hadn't actually kind of started to go out and really sell myself as a speaker or anything like that. And then I had intended for there to be a nice long transition. But as it turned out, we as a family decided to move to the UK, and just that the stars all aligned. And I was like, this is great. Let's just do it. I didn't cut cold turkey. So I actually made an arrangement with my current company then to hire me as a consultant part-time for, I think I probably worked for them for about a year. So for about a year, I was kind of half and half. But I was a consultant, so I had a lot of flexibility in my schedule and things like that. And then I also made sure that we had plenty of savings, because I knew that we would need that. Starting any business requires you to have a plan, whatever that plan is. For some people, it's a transition plan. For me, it was a savings plan where we had money set aside specifically for it. And that was kind of the approach we took.
And in those early days, who were the kind of speakers that you either knew personally, you kind of looked up to, or you looked at from afar? You said, that's the kind of speaking business that I want? Because there's so many different flavors of speaking business. But who are those kind of guiding stars for you?
Well, I definitely look at a variety of speakers, because there's some that I like for the way that they look at the business of speaking. I'm quite business centric. To me, speaking is like the icing on that cake. So if I can't do the business right, I don't get to speak. So I don't spend as much time, I think, as some other speakers might do, kind of focusing on, well, who delivers beautifully, and, how can I match their style, or how could I learn what they know about delivery? I think delivery is important, but I think that managing a business that's profitable is more important, because no matter how good you are on stage, if you can't run a business, then that's no good. One of my very first connections into the speaking world was Alan Stevens in the PSA. And he was really instrumental. I actually took him on as a coach early on. And he was really instrumental in kind of helping me to see the land, and kind of understand the landscape of professional speaking. And Jane Atkinson was an important part of the early part of my journey. And, while not a speaker herself, what Jane doesn't know about the speaking business might not be worth knowing. So that was kind of a big kick for me, was to kind of get those perspectives and learn from them.
Those are two great coaches to have. Alan, in terms of also very good at craft, understanding craft. Jane, very, very good at the business side. I remember when I started speaking, and Jane, wonderful book, The Wealthy Speaker, she maybe just bought an audio, or there was an audio version. And I remember my wife and I driving to some speaking gigs that I was doing, just devouring this audio book, or version of that book. And it was just, every time we just had to kind of stop it every few minutes, because there was just so many fantastic nuggets of information that we had to kind of digest it gradually over time. So those are great coaches to have. So you mentioned you made this transition, you moved to the UK. What did you notice were the differences and the similarities between the speakers and the speaking businesses in those two different places? Because obviously we speak a similar language, but not exactly the same, but quite different in terms of culturally, the industries in those places.
Yeah, it is. It is quite different, in my opinion. Fundamentally, it's the same profession, but in terms of style, it is vastly different. Let's face it, Americans are out there, we're enthusiastic, we're big voices and big hair and whatever else. And the British are very reserved, and they, tend to not kind of go over the top like we might as Americans. There's probably a great happy medium between our two nations.
A mid-Atlantic speaker.
Exactly, yeah. And so that was probably one of the biggest things. I think, I remember getting a comment on an evaluation once that I thought just summed it up perfectly, where somebody wrote, "American, but in a good way." And I was like, that's it. I put that on my website for a long time. I can't remember if it's still there or not, but I put it on my website for a long time when I was living in the UK, because I thought, all right, that sums it up. Right. I am a bigger stage speaker, meaning that, big voice, big personality, big hand gestures. I'm not quite East Coast, but that is my style on stage.
And you said East Coast. So explain what you mean when you say that.
Oh, East Coast. So East Coast Americans, when you get into New York, right? You get into your New York people, your New York people, they're loud. They got a lot of hand gestures. They talk with their hands a lot. So, and it's one of the things I find most endearing about them. I'm always like, this is like a full experience conversation. This is not just me listening. I am experiencing this person. So that is probably one of the big differences, is just in delivery style and what that style looks like. The other big difference is it comes into kind of topics and approach. It's one of the things that I used to tell all the Americans that would come over. Religion is an important part of America, an important part of a lot of Americans' lives. And because that's generally true in the States, I think a lot of Americans take that religion with them and they bring that religion with them onto stage. But that is definitely not the most welcome perspective when you're international. So the farther away from America are they, the less people want to hear about your religious preferences and beliefs. They're like, you know what, that's your personal choice and good for you, and just keep it to yourself.
Yeah, it's I think at dinner parties in the UK, you don't talk about politics, sex, and religion. Those are just you don't tend not to go there.
Although with sex, it is just innuendo. So
that's true. Which I
totally admire.
So there's obviously the difference in tone, different stuff. I mean, I really like, because I think a lot of that American style of speaking comes from the church, comes from the evangelical side of the church, and there's something in terms of using call and response that I really like. I find it is, but I understand where maybe some audiences don't like, they feel it's just a little bit too much as well, and so you kind of have to temper that. What about the business itself? I hear a lot of European speakers say, almost look to America with, that's where, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, like the New York thing. That's where the speakers get the best money. It's where all the gigs are. Is that true?
I think that it's a bit true and a bit false. I think that from the business perspective, and this is just one person's opinion, I found Europe to be much more relationship based from a business perspective. It's more about who you know. It's much more referral based. So, yes, I would get, general inquiries on my website, things like that, but much more often it's much more about, oh, hey, I introduced you to so-and-so, they're going to call you, or let me introduce you to this person, or that type of thing. So that network was really important in the UK and in Europe. So I say Europe, and I do mean the UK as well. My husband's British. He does get concerned when I reference the UK as being part of Europe. So, the other thing about the business, I would say that fees are generally, in the UK specifically, fees are lower, full stop, like absolutely lower than they are in the States for the most part. The market in the States is bigger. It just by sheer volume and quantity, it's bigger. So I think what ends up happening is there's this maybe unrealistic perspective that just because there's more gigs, there's more things happening all the time, more meetings, more speakers, more all of this, that it means that you can build a better business here. And I don't know that that's true, because again, you're in a bigger pond. It's, the larger the body of water, the harder it is to find other fish, and it's harder to find opportunities and gigs, you have to know where to look.
And the competition is extreme, I would say, in the US as well. Regardless of what your topic area is, there will be 10 top-notch speakers out there that they're looking for as well. So how do you, even if we just take geographically, we just look at the US, what are some of the things that you do going into your topic? How do you stand apart from all those other speakers that may be being considered alongside you?
Well, there's one of the big things is to really sit down and figure out what it is that makes you unique as a speaker. Not about your delivery necessarily, although that could be it. I used to talk about, when I spoke at the PSA National one year, I spoke about, what it is that makes you unique, your 5 E's. But basically one of them is, what is your experience that you deliver? And it's everything about your topic and who you are and your background and all of that type of stuff. For me, it's the fact that I'm an inventor. So what is the thing that, if you were to sit down and make a list of adjectives or facts about yourself, and just list them all out, how many could other people claim? So that helps you to really find what your unique angle is. For you, how many people have worked in the music industry, and how many have, launched amazing music brands? Not very many people. So that would be a great differentiator for you. And clearly it is, right? And the creative prowess that comes with that. For me, it's the fact that I have 20 years in corporate and I'm an inventor. Not other speakers can say that.
And then
that's a part of it, is finding a unique place.
So the key thing about you when talking about positioning there is having proof points to underpin that positioning. So you can't just say, let's say if it was someone that was speaking the same thing as you and say, but I'm an inventor as well, if you haven't invented anything, you don't have anything. So you have, and I just kind of want to move into next is, I only know a relatively small number of speakers that have done this well, that have not just their speaking business, model is often, maybe they have their speaking, and then they maybe have maybe it's a training part to what they do, or coaching or advisory. And then there's their books, maybe it's online courses, but that kind of seems to be around those things. Maybe there's consulting, but there's this other thing, physical products. And there's a smaller number of speakers out there who have been able to launch products kind of successfully, multiple products successfully into the market as well. So this is something that you've done. And so I'd love to know, first of all, where do you see physical products sitting in your overall business as a speaker? What is the function or the role of it for you? And just take us through, I know you're working on, you just worked on the Hey mic, which is a microphone. We talk about that for speakers. Take us through what that process actually looks like of taking something from inside your head to a physical thing, and then how that once again supports your brand. That's positioning.
Yeah, it's so when it comes to product, and I do, by the way, fully believe that things like e-courses and online training and even books, those are all product. They're great. They're all product. What I find really interesting and a great challenge is almost your non-speaking products. So there are all kinds of products, and I'll make some resources available to your listeners so that they can kind of look at some examples of products. But I do have a big interest in non-speaking related products. And there's a couple of reasons why I think they're really valuable, particularly in our industry. Speakers as a rule are time for money. We are, in essence, trading our time on stage, or our time coaching, or our time training, whatever it is we're doing, we're trading our time for money. Now, there comes a point where you don't want to do that anymore, because you don't want to give up that time. You don't want to be on the road, so you have to find where's your next place that you're going to land, or how are you going to build a business that can survive that transition. So, of course, you can start to do more things online. That's still time for money. You're just not traveling as much. And really, in order to get out of that equation, in order to extract yourself from that equation, you have to have something else to offer the market besides just you. And that is product. Now, it could be product because you yourself have become a brand name, which is great, right? There are certainly examples of that. People that have become famous and now they have products that are famous because of them. I mean, that's every celebrity who's ever launched a product. That's great. I don't know that most of us will ever attain that level of notoriety or are willing to put in the time and the hours and the heartache and the struggles that come with creating a brand name for ourselves like that. So I tend to just do things that are more product-based. So the product that you're referring to, Hey Mike, was actually a product that I had created before I ever left corporate. I never intended to take it to market. It was a product I had created just to solve a problem I was experiencing. So I was a director of product marketing for a software company, and I was forever giving presentations, and I needed sales and my marketing team to be able to take the messages and the phrasing that I was using when I would speak and put that into our marketing. So I needed them to be able to understand the value propositions, to repeat them in a more compelling way, and to be able to reuse that content. So I wanted to record my presentations. But that was really hard because we weren't going to pay for a full-on video crew. And I was usually presenting to hundreds, if not thousands of people. So what was the solution for that? So I wanted to video with my phone, but it was terrible audio when I did that. And audio was actually the most important thing that we needed. So I started hacking together a couple different existing products and kind of splicing things together, and some super glue and some duct tape. And basically I made myself a Bluetooth microphone, a Bluetooth lapel microphone that I could clip onto my shirt when I was speaking. And then I could connect it to my phone in the back of the room. And I used that for years. And then I was speaking at an event with a person named Steve Clark, with a buddy of mine, Steve Clark. And I said I was going to record the event for the attendees so they could have a copy of it. And he said, oh, the acoustics and sound in this room are terrible. Never gotten a good recording in this room. And I said, oh, it's okay. I've got my phone. I brought a tripod and I've got my microphone. And he was like, I'm sorry, what do you have? And I showed him the microphone and he's like, oh my God, I've been looking for one of these. Where can I get one? And I was like, I don't know. I guess I could make you one. And he was like, what? And so a week later, we shook hands, agreed to take the microphone to market, manufacture it, take it to market. 90 days later, it launched.
90 days later. That's a phenomenal amount of time. So
crazy.
So, and this is obviously a physical thing. There are electronic components, there's technology, there's branding, there's packaging.
Yeah.
So where do you even begin? Is this something like those first ones in 90 days? Did you make them, you were in the UK at this point, did you make them in the UK, or were you able to get them immediately starting manufacturing in lower cost countries?
Well, yes, we did both. So we actually had a partner in the UK. So that was, of all the lessons I learned, it's partner with somebody who knows what they're doing if you don't. We clearly did not, as the case turns out. I had never manufactured anything. I had never created a physical product before. So my background is in software, enterprise software. So, not a big physical product space. While I have a background in sales and marketing, and Steve has a background in sales, neither one of us are electrical engineers. So we really partnered with, again, a connection that somebody knew in the UK, because that's how a lot of business gets done there. We partnered with a connection, and it was a company in Essex, and they have 30 people that work for them in China. That actually do what we needed, which was they help product entrepreneurs source manufacturing facilities, and they do everything. All the communication with China is done through our partner. And they're still our partner today. So that way,
they take out all that back and forth that usually is kind of going on, and we have a product we're involved in, a separate product, which is also partly manufactured in China. And I know that the challenges that can sometimes have when your product's being made thousands of miles away from you as well. So they were able, and when it came to things like quality control, how do you ensure that things, 'cause I know everything you do is always got a very high quality, and I've seen some of your kits that you send out to clients, your information packs, and they're all beautifully done, really high quality. So how do you ensure that your quality is good when you're not making it in your home country?
Well, we did a ton of prototypes. So before we actually said, yeah, we'll take, thousands of these things, we did tons of prototypes. And it used to be this kind of laugh between me and Steve and my family, right? I'd be like, hold on, let me get the box of prototypes out. And like every one of them was numbered and labeled. And it was, every piece of this had an impact on the quality. So we had the casing and we had the microchip. Like we had made it all the way through. This is what we want it to look like. This is how it's going to clip. This is what it's going to do. All that kind of stuff. And then when they went, and it worked beautifully. So then when they said, great, we'll put all that together in a new prototype for you, they sent it to us, and all of a sudden the microchip had changed. And the sound was terrible. I mean, cutting out, and I was gutted. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happened? And so it ended up with, we only had the one prototype. I'd given it to Steve to take to the States because he was meeting with some American speakers and I wanted to get some early adopters and influencers in the States. And it ended up with Steve at a restaurant at like 6 o'clock in the morning with a tiny eyeglass screwdriver that he'd had to go and purchase from a local drugstore, disassembling our tiny little microphone. And Steve, blind as a bat, right? Can't see a thing without his glasses. He's blurry-eyed in the morning, right? He's got his glasses on, but he can hardly see. He's disassembling the microphone, and I'm like, I need you to take a picture of the microchip that's inside that microphone because that's the microchip that works. And it was just this, you know, it was an adventure. Like every day was an adventure.
And when you were getting those prototyping, you were getting that first feedback from users, from speakers. Yeah. What kind of things were they saying? What were the things that you initially said, oh, you know, we need to work on that. We need to develop, we need to make that better.
Well, one of them, a great example, and this is why there's a lot of value in taking product progress to the market. So our case for Hey Mike is a little black zipper case, but we had shared some pictures on Facebook of the early prototypes of the case. So this was done in the UK. So we had the case and we went to our partner in the UK and we were there as they were live silk screening them in front of us. So he gotten us a dozen cases and he was silk screening them. And it was amazing to watch our logo and product information. I mean, there's some moments during the process where you're like, oh my gosh, it's real. It's totally real. And so we had showed these pictures and our plan had been to put 2 microphones in this case. And everybody was like, that's a really big case. I don't think I want to put that in my bag. Like, I'm not sure I want that big a case. And I was like, oh my gosh, the case is too big. Change the case. So we were constantly kind of trying things out and putting sample videos out and asking for feedback and asking for use cases. And even then, you know, we've been shocked and surprised at what the use cases have been for Hey Mike. So they weren't what we thought they would be, which is often the case. Products take on a life of their own.
So which markets did you end up finding maybe outside of speakers that actually have really taken to the product?
Well, video bloggers would be one, but the array of video bloggers is substantial. Horse trainers and physical therapists and people that want to make videos for YouTube for all kinds of reasons, but mostly they're in a position where they can't be next to a microphone. So they're out in the wild somewhere doing something. One of our favorite customers is always sharing videos online, and they are the Stand-Up Paddleboarding Association. And the Stand-Up Paddleboarding Association, they take the Hey Mike and they clip it to a paddle, and then she does paddle interviews. So she makes her paddle all over, and they're hysterical. I encourage you to go look at them. So she's doing interviews all the time at all these paddleboarding competitions.
And what you just described there about getting that feedback, putting things up, getting feedback, and changing the packaging, that's, I guess, what we would call incremental innovation. Lots of small steps, making things better and better. So this kind of ties in because this is a topic you actually speak on. You speak on incremental innovation as well. So that bring us back. So you've got launched this product out into the market. Now I know we've got a lot of not just early adopters. Now we're getting more speakers, other markets, people are buying it. Where does this? Is this really just? Is the product ending up just it's the play really is just a way of creating some residual income alongside your speaking business, or is it really a part of your business? What's the what role does it serve now?
So my business model overall is that my target is that within the next 12 to 24 months, product sales for all of my products, not just Hey Mike, but all the products that I create and launch, the product sales for all of those will pay all of our bills as a family. So residual income for sure is the primary thing. Now, as a bonus, it is also part of the stories that I tell when I speak. So it's a story generator and residual income. It's also proof point for what I do as a speaker. You know, I talk about innovation, I talk about inventing. It makes sense then that I would need to have examples for that.
And going back, it goes back to that when you say you're positioning yourself not just as a speaker, as a marketing, but someone that really understands you're an inventor as well. So that's every time you tell that story is adding a stronger and stronger kind of proof points as well. One thing I have to ask about mics, 'cause I'm always intrigued by this, is I think as guy speakers, we have it super easy because we usually have like this microphone holder called a tie that we just clip it. These things I've seen how that you can either clip it there, clip it. When you're working with some of the women speakers, and I know this for speakers that have had the clip-on packs for your head. You've got your headset mic. You've got all these different things that are kind of going on. You're having to attach to yourself. Was that something you thought about in terms of where they're actually going to attach it?
Absolutely, I thought about it. We actually have the Hey mic has two backs. So one is a clip, and then the other one is a magnet. So I can magnet it up here, or magnet it over here, or here, or here, or so I can magnet it anywhere. Did you say that? Magnet it?
Magnet.
Yeah. I would magnetize it somewhere on my shirt. Yeah. So I did think of that in the design. Turns out it's not really used as much as I would have thought. That's the other thing about product. Boy, things that you are like, we have got to have this. Everybody's going to want this. This is a critical feature. And then you just find out nobody's ever once used it.
Yeah.
Hey mic has a plug-in to listen on headphones. So if you wanted to listen back, to a video on your headphones right after you record it, you could. Nobody's ever used it.
It's that the danger of feature creep. Sometimes it kind of comes into it. So you're back in the US. You're now building your speaking business back in the US. Obviously, the products are just kind of taking on a life of their own as well. How does it feel being back in the US and building a speaking business? Do you feel that this is a relaunch, or do you feel like you're launching for the first time with your speaking? Where's your head at with it?
Well, I think it's probably more of a relaunch because my branding and my marketing are all pretty solid. So it's not as if, like I was when I started in the UK, I wasn't really sure what my brand would be. I wasn't, I didn't have all my collateral created. I didn't have all of those kind of pieces and parts, and even messaging to a certain point. So I initially started speaking almost exclusively about sales. And it was a good year and a half or 2 years before I had a conversation with a friend of mine who you might know, Donna St. Louis, who is also a global speaker. And I remember, at that moment going, I just, I like sales, but it just doesn't really kind of get me up in the morning. And she's like, why aren't you talking about innovation? I'd already launched Hey Mike. I was always talking about it. And she was like, why aren't you talking about innovation? And I was like, oh, yeah, I could do that.
But actually, that's quite a common. I see that where initially when people start with their speaking career, they've come from a particular industry, they've a particular skill set, and that's the first thing that they go to. And actually, that makes a lot of sense to do that because you understand the pain points of your clients because you've lived it, you've been in that world. So I would say that's actually a good thing to do. But then after a while, you discover maybe that's not the thing that you really want to spend the next 10 years building. So you've made that, you're now making that transition into the innovation as well. And once again, you've got all those proof points at the same time. And I'm guessing it's not that you've given off the sales, speaking to this kind of sales groups, but it's just you're adding almost like a new product line to what you're doing.
Yeah, so I was always talking about improving sales, which is really what innovation is. Innovation is it's about improvement always. And even the things that I was saying to sales, I could just as easily call them innovation as sales. So I have a program that's called Little Big Bangs for Sales, and it's largely the same content I always delivered. It's just now it's under the banner of innovation for sales as opposed to sales being innovative. So it's just kind of a different entry point into it. I think the way that I would describe it to especially new speakers coming in is that you start your first year or two on a pendulum. So, you're kind of constantly trying out new things. And then what ends up happening over time is that you kind of center and then you go, that's where all the pieces have come together. And it's everything from what audiences like the way that you deliver, what audiences resonate with your message, what audiences can afford to pay you the fee that you want to earn. The collateral, everything, all of that starts to come together so that you start to feel like you yourself are a cohesive package, that you are able to bring yourself onto the stage. I'm not a super serious person. I'm not going to get up and make people cry during a keynote. And it's important that I know that so that I can brand myself properly. And I wouldn't want an audience to have a different expectation of me. So everything about my collateral, my packaging, my marketing, my website, all of that has to come together. And the message has to come together to truly represent who I am, so that when customers buy me and they buy the services that I offer, they know exactly what they're getting. And when I arrive, they think that was exactly what I was expecting.
And you mentioned those early mentors you had with Alan Stevens, with Jane Atkinson as well. You're also a SpeakersU member now as well. What are some of the values, some of the things that you find really useful being a SpeakersU member?
Well, definitely for me, it's about process. This is not, my goal is not to spend 24/7, doing business building. I like to systemize and automate as much as possible. My CRM is a thing of beauty.
And a CRM is automation is absolutely one of those things that really works well if you have an incremental innovation mindset, because you're constantly just building and making things better and more refined.
Yes, and that's so to me, systemizing is always what I'm looking for. A slightly better turn of phrase, a slightly better process, a way to get out of me doing everything. So that's always a big challenge and a big priority for me. My time is limited. Every hour that I spend doing something that is not directly related to me selling myself and being on stage and delivering, that's time, that's money out of my pocket. So if there's other things that people can do besides me, that's what I need to focus on. So there's another great speaker that I really admire is Rory Vaden. I don't know if you know Rory.
Yeah, Rory and AJ, they're fantastic speakers.
Yeah, they're brilliant. And one of Rory's talks, one of his books is actually, about this idea of do things today that will make more time for you tomorrow. So you're really about investing your time. And so I'm a huge fan of investing my time like that. And that's a big part of my business process, is wherever I can learn processes, that's what I'm after. I do really well at kind of learning craft. And I do think that's important to invest in learning craft. But again, if I can't get my business running and keep it running smoothly and profitably with good margin, doesn't matter how good I am on stage.
And there's great books all around there in terms of things like, the E-Myth Revisited, Michael E. Gerber, just talking about building systems. I'm always in working with our team building standard operating procedures and then ways of doing things. And then we basically test like you do with your products. And then we find the stuff that works, and then we share that with the SpeakersU members. And the things that don't work so well, those get killed off and put down to experience as well. So we've been talking a lot about kind of tools here, products. Are there any tools that you find particularly useful in the work that you do as a speaker?
I have a ton of favorite tools. Right now, I have my CRM, which has proved to be really, really valuable to me because it's actually very broad. So I use Zoho One. So it's really specific, Zoho One. And Zoho One is you pay one fee per employee of your company. The reason that's important is most of us are solopreneurs. So while I have people that work with me, they're all contractors and they're not officially employees of my company. So, and I can get them licenses, but I'm not required to buy a license for all of them. So for $30 a month, I have access to about 20 or 30 different sets of functionality. The CRM is only one of them. So with Zoho One, I've replaced Dropbox. I use it for my email marketing. I use it for my social media scheduling. I use it for my electronic signatures for contracts and agreements. I use it for my sales IQ, and it has the capability of doing chatbots. I mean, this thing is massive, all the things that it can do, all for $30 a month. So I'm a big fan of streamlining because juggling lots of tools is always problematic. Another one that I really like is a tool called DocSend. So DocSend is a document sharing platform, but it's very intelligence based, which means that every time I create a proposal, for example, to speak or whatever it is that I'm doing, speaking, every time I create a proposal, I send that proposal out using a DocSend link. And that DocSend link then tells me, I get an email as soon as they open it. I can look at that and see how much time they spent on every page of the proposal. I can require an email so that when they access that proposal, I can see specifically who was looking at it and when. And then that provides me with a lot of intelligence about what are they most interested in and who's looking at it. And I can see even things like, I use the same tool to do things like after event reports. So I do beautiful after event summaries that I give back to the event organizer. And there's all kinds of reasons why, but when I do that, now they have a reason to meet with me to go over the event because I'm giving them something. I'm giving them this great product that they can share around the company about the success of the event. But I can also include things like next steps on there. And I've had instances where I've thought a conversation has kind of gone quiet, or I've thought a deal was lost, and 2 months later, they're opening that same document again.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have any way to know that if I didn't have a tool that delivered that.
And I think that also, because a lot of decisions, especially associations, they're being made by a committee when it comes to the speakers. So you're able to see who the committee members are, who's sharing it, who's seeing it. I do a slightly similar thing, albeit I use video. I use a tool called BombBomb, where I film a very quick video, and it goes out to the person that's contacted me initially after I've had a discussion with them, and I see it getting shared with all the other committee members. And like you, I just had one this morning. I just saw where I thought an event had gone away. It'd been a long time, they hadn't confirmed, and suddenly you start getting the notifications and saying, "Oh, they're opening again." So now's probably a good time to reach out to have that conversation. So that's a great one. So DocSend, I'm going to put there, and any others that you find really useful.
Okay, this one's going to be like a bit of a shocker. The most valuable tool in my business, I'm in every single day extensively, is PowerPoint. I know people are like, oh, PowerPoint, oh, we hate slides and presentations. I do use PowerPoint for presentations, that's true. But what I actually use PowerPoint for more is all of my collateral is done in PowerPoint.
Okay.
So unless it's collateral that I'm truly sending, like if I'm doing big graphics for like a show stand or something like that, all of my collateral is done in PowerPoint. And I'll make examples of these available, but like everything that I do is done in PowerPoint. So all my Word documents, things that are in letter size, everything, all done in PowerPoint.
Really? Wow. I didn't know. I've never used it for that. I've only ever used it for presentations, but now you've turned me on to actually using PowerPoint for something a little bit more.
Well, the thing is that there are a ton of tools out there, but the truth is that as speakers, like how many tools can you really master? And the more you kind of go off and master Adobe Photoshop, or you go and master InDesign, or you go and master something else, your brain's only so big, so at a certain point, you're taking time away from mastering that. I am a master of PowerPoint in large part because I use it all the time for all kinds of things. So I've used it to do, see if I can give you a good example. I have one laying around my desk. But like I have voting cards that I use. I design those in PowerPoint, and then I just turn them into print graphics. So, that is probably the most valuable tool because it's a tool I always have. I always feel comfortable with editing it. It's got just enough flexibility, but not too much. So it's been a massive improvement to my business. Fantastic. And you said yourself, James, I am a nerd when it comes to the quality of my brand and my collateral. I love good collateral, and all in PowerPoint.
Great. We're going to put all those here as well, all those links. What about if you were to recommend one book to our listeners, one that you think they should read if they're thinking about growing their speaking business? It could be on the speaking industry, or it could be a book that's completely unrelated to speaking, but it's just a good one to read in terms of business.
Do I think one of the best books I've ever read it's actually not about speaking at all. But it's called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And it's really about understanding markets and finding market potential. It's really about products, But I just remember reading it and thinking, my gosh, this is the slap in the face that I have needed my whole life, that said, stop building it. We always assume that it's like Sim City. We put down a hospital in Sim City and everybody just starts driving there, and it's really not the case. So I always find it fascinating now to go, okay, I shouldn't build anything that I can't prove there's a need for or prove that there's value for.
Yeah.
That's true of my speeches. That's true of my programs. That's true of my products that I launch. So to me, that was a big it was an epiphany. 4 steps to the epiphany.
Fantastic. We'll put that link down here as well. And I think you also mentioned that you had something that listeners can get from you. You had a document, I think, that we're going to put a link here to as well. And that's all related to the products side, what we've kind of been covering a little bit about on this interview as well.
Yep. I'm happy to make those resources available.
Fantastic. We'll put a link here. I'll take you onto Julie's site. And a final question for you. I want you to imagine you woke up tomorrow morning and you have to start from scratch. So you've got all the skills, all the knowledge you've acquired over the years, but no one knows you, you know no one. What would you do? How would you restart things?
That's a great question. I would join the NSA or the PSA. I would find a community, because in that community, you now start to get exponential reach. So, in terms of getting your name out there, it's really hard to do it on your own. I think, you're just one voice talking about you. I think it's really important to have a network of people that understand you, know what you're doing, and can help you to find your market and reach it faster.
Fantastic. Great advice. Good advice. If people want to connect with you to learn more about what you're doing, where's the best place to go and do that? And if they want to learn more about Hey Mike, specifically for speakers, where should they go for that?
So my website, of course, is julieholmes.com. Just like Sherlock Holmes, but the Julie version of that. And for Hey Mike, it's Love Hey Mike, LOVEHEYMIC.com, loveheymike.com. So you can learn more about Hey Mike there. To connect with me and learn more about what I'm doing, LinkedIn is a great place. So you can get a hold of me on LinkedIn or any of my social media channels. And here's another tip for everybody. If you ever use link shortening. So all my social media channels can be found by going to julieholmes.vip/LinkedIn, /Instagram, /Twitter, /YouTube, all of those. So just julieholmes.vip / insert the social media platform and you'll be directed to my profile.
Fantastic. Well, Julie, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your insights. I think what you've done, not just in your speaking side, but also building these products out, is a really smart thing to do. And I know you're really passionate about inventing and inspiring other people to invent things as well. So I wish you all the best with your speaking, and thanks for being a SpeakersU member, and looking forward to sharing a stage together soon.
All right. I'll see you soon, James.
This episode of The Speaker's Life is sponsored by eSpeakers, the innovative platform that connects speakers with event organizers and associations. eSpeakers provides cutting-edge tools that will elevate your online presence, streamline your speaking business, and maximize your exposure in the speaking industry. With over 15 years in the business, 10,000 speakers in their community, and over 20,000 events managed annually, eSpeakers is the preferred choice for top speakers. You can create your own profile on eSpeakers today by going to SpeakersU.com /eSpeakers.